You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
On the domestic front here in the United States, we have two kinds of momentum that are both contributing to what has to be the most amazing movement from one age to another. We are finally leaving the age of the arrogant liberal. So there are two kinds of momentum. First of all, you have a Trump team that is stabilizing. You say, wait a minute, like stabilizing is a kind of momentum? 150% absolutely it is. On the concurrent, you have the left who is gaining momentum straight into the ground. And I mean concrete faceplant, it's not looking pretty. So let's dig into what some of these particular momentum are, because to say that we're moving from the age of the arrogant liberal and into a new one means it's got to be pretty significant. And it is. Foreign policy is starting to stabilize. Scott Bessent is moving the country towards more significant trade deals. The policy of the United States that's more akin to the first Trump administration, in which we tell other countries it's my way or the highway. That is a particularly strong feeling coming out of the White House this week. It appears, and this would be the more speculative side of things, that with a lot of the Trump administration stopping some of the kind of squabbling as to whether a more isolationist approach or a pimp slap first and ask questions later style approach is the move. Now that that's kind of been brushed aside and you have Vice President J.D. Vance making statements like, we believe this is best for the country, I think that kind of stabilization is going to have some serious impact. And that brings us to a lot of foreign policy regarding China and Germany that we'll be talking about in just a moment. The economy is also starting to stabilize. That's big news. And the reason that's big news is because that was kind of the one small minor Achilles heel for the Trump administration. And when I say minor, I mean in the first 100 days, which is a stupid way to measure many parts of a presidency. Ever since we've started having presidents that rule by executive order and regulatory fiat, we've started caring a whole lot about the first 100 days of the administration. Oh, his first 100 days, how we would grade him, how people like it, how they don't like it. Because when you rule by executive order, you care a lot about what those executive orders are and are not doing. And so, in fact, it does matter a whole heck of a lot whether or not an administration is bringing certain policy to bear. And by the way, some policy changes, especially given old Joe Biden, who ruled that, we needed to make sure that our military was as full of dudes in skirts as possible, and our health department was as full of fat guys in skirts as possible, and our transportation department was full of men out on leave chest feeding as possible. It turns out those executive orders aren't very popular. The Trump administration coming in and reversing that kind of nonsense, yeah, that's a big step. But I don't believe the economy should be one of the things measured in the first 100 days. It takes a long time to make significant economic changes if you are going to change how certain things are going. And that's not an endorsement or an outright denial as to whether or not the Trump administration has done anything specific that's great or negative for the economy. That's just a simple statement as far as foreign policy over long periods and the economy over long periods is concerned. 100 days is too short to issue any kind of judgment. Now, that said, the Democrats have completely missed the opportunity to call out Trump over the economy. Completely lost it. It's gone, over, period, bong, see ya. Because now the Trump administration has really gotten all of the ducks in a row. Howard Lutnick is starting to parrot the same lines that Scott Bessent has brought forward. It's a very, very, very good move. And the most massive accomplishment of the Trump administration has been the people in the middle of the country on both kind of the 90s labor Democrat side that is typically found in the industrial Midwestern areas, all the way down to the Deep South, who are a major fan of Trump's economic policy, even if it means they have to pay more for goods. And this group is being discounted. They're not being talked about. So that when MSNBC goes down to cover particular events, they think they're going to get Trump on talking to his supporters about the economy, and it doesn't quite go the way that they're expecting.
Are you prepared to pay higher prices for goods?
I've been paying higher prices, sweetie, in the last, when Biden got in office, my groceries have doubled, my gas has doubled. No, I'm already used to it, I'm not used to it.
But you're prepared for more. We're looking at, with the tariffs, these are massive tariffs.
No, but it has to happen before it goes back down.
That is a very common sentiment among all kinds of individuals in the Trump economy. That is, that there is a large group of people who 100% buys the line from the administration that it has to hurt before it gets better. And the idea that you can just kind of gloss over that and like not actually factor that in whatsoever ain't going to work. And now that things are starting to shift away because Trump is in fact a pragmatist, and we've said this before, that if Trump saw economic indicators that weren't popular, he was going to move from it. And we see this because J.D. Vance and President Trump have made it very clear that they're kind of attributing the sluggish, kind of the not as fantastic Q1 economy to President Biden before him, that they recognize, in fact, that the Q1 economy moves weren't necessarily great 100% of the time. And again, pragmatism in an administration where you don't just keep on going and ignoring everyone forever, which is what Joe Biden did, the ability to respond and change course is, in fact, something that will benefit the Trump administration greatly. Scott Bessent makes an extremely good case for this.
As a recovering Wall Street person, I can tell you Wall Street people like instant gratification. President Trump's agenda is an agenda for the next 1, 2, 3 decades in the U.S. of bringing back manufacturing. And we have a very, what I call a barbell economy. On one side, we're the envy in the world of financial services, tech. On the other side, we're a great natural resource economy driven by energy. We're going to keep the energy dominance going. And what President Trump is doing is looking to bring back the precision manufacturing jobs that have left over the past decades. And I think we will close the uncertainty aperture more and more every day, every week on these tariffs.
He's right. He's right. All of the instability from the tariff battles, all of the instability from kind of going in like he did in the first administration with a sledgehammer with Canada and Mexico, now in this administration with everybody, he being Donald Trump, and smashing up all the old trade deals to do something new. Now we're in the point of those deals actually moving forward. The deal with Ukraine has been signed. The deal with India is in the works. The deal with South Korea is in the works. The deal with Japan is in the works. And we're going to talk a little bit later about why that is so crucial regarding China, because here we are yet again on the Trump cycle. The window to stop the momentum of the Trump administration has closed. And that is extreme doom for the Democrats. We haven't even talked about the 177,000 jobs added in April, which, by the way, aren't government jobs. When Biden would come forward and announce that he has brand new jobs for everybody, two things would happen. Number one, they'd all be federal jobs, which is a drain on the economy, not a gain on the economy. And number two, they would have to slowly walk back all of those gains they theoretically had, like 2 or 3 weeks after they announced this big, massive success, because the Biden administration lied consistently about everything. And by the way, because the Trump administration has largely stabilized, this means that new developments, new victories are going to be slam dunks that skyrocket approval. Because when you're starting from a baseline, and then you add positives, instead of adding positives to negatives, it's going to have a major, major impact. Democrats, however, are making some seriously rough mistakes on reading the Trump administration sledgehammering and the kind of uncertainty that caused Trump's approval ratings to slip. They've decided that because Trump's approval rating slipped a little bit, this means, well, then we must be really super popular because after all, we're the opposition. Nope, not at all. And Harry Enton over on CNN is more than happy to, again, pimp slap those who can't seem to read.
So Kamala Harris obviously doesn't hold elected office right now, but Democrats in Congress sure do. So who do you trust more on the U.S. main problems, the main problems in the United States? Well, what do we have here? It's the same exact picture, folks. It's the same exact picture. When you match Donald Trump against his actual competition, Donald Trump comes out ahead. Look at this, 40% to congressional Democrats, 32%. Going to make a big circle here. But the bottom line is, When you look at Donald Trump in a vacuum, it's one thing. But when you actually match him up against folks in the real world, all of a sudden his numbers look considerably better. And when you match him up against his main competition at this point, Democrats in Congress, he is more trusted on the main problems facing the United States right now. In fact,
so Americans are like unhappy when the government does things they don't really care for, and they still despise the arrogant liberal generation that is currently over on the left. Yep. And Trump, when his approval numbers sink a little bit, he immediately course corrects, like on a dime. The Democrats, when an entire country says, no, we don't want men in lingerie in classrooms, the Democrats are like, well, then you're a racist, bigoted, homophobic, whatever. And we're going to do it twice as much now. Radio crew will catch you in just a second. Have to send you to commercial land. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, this brings me to one of the reasons I love the Democrats. Let me give you a little proof in the pudding here. Chuck Schumer was so quick to walk out and suggest that, oh, well, Donald Trump's poll numbers and approval ratings spell his doom. And then when his own approval ratings are read back to them, oh, different story.
Americans are noticing. The polls this week show Trump has the lowest 100-day approval rating since they started polling 80 years ago, the lowest. Even worse, 72% of Americans think it's likely that Trump's handling of the economy will walk us directly into a recession. People who hate what Trump is proposing. Yes.
There's a poll out today that has your approval rating lower than any other congressional leader at 17%. Are you concerned that you may be a liability for your party?
Polls come and go. Our party is united.
Oh, polls come and go. All of a sudden, when Chuck Schumer is slapped with a 17% approval rating, then the polls don't matter. That kind of attitude is only going to increase the momentum of the left straight into the concrete. Again, how the media covers things. So since Trump has been using tariffs, The Atlantic has decided, remember Atlanta, the whole Signalgate thing? They decided to release an article. Here's what the article says, quote, Hitler used tariffs. Of course, Hitler. Yes. Hitler used tariffs to liberate Germany from a globalized world order, careening the economy backwards. By the way, I will remind you that during the Biden administration, here's how the New York Times framed Biden's tariffs. Biden administration ratchets up tariffs on Chinese goods. The administration moved to block off a popular tariff-free path for Chinese apparel coming into the U.S. and added stiff levies on electric vehicles, solar panels, and other products. Nothing in that coverage that particularly condemns economic leverage. Amazing. But again, the momentum will continue. And this all funnels down into the NPR and PBS public broadcasting systems officially and finally getting their federal funding ripped away from their greedy little grubbing hands. And the left is losing their ever-loving minds over it, and it's wonderful. It is wonderful. So Trump's executive order wrote, quote, the CPB board shall cease indirect funding to NPR and PBS, including by ensuring that licenses and permittees of public radio and TV stations, as well as any other recipients of CPB funds, do not use federal dollars for NPR and PBS. That is excellent. That is excellent. The political entities, and I do mean the overtly political entities of PBS and NPR. I'm not talking about Sesame Street. I'm talking about the reporting that those outlets claim is unbiased, is extremely biased on the taxpayer dollar. The language that is used, what stories are covered and how they're covered, and then, of course, the open political criticism of only one side of the aisle and the blind eye turned to any mistakes made by anyone on the left side of the aisle is despicable when it comes to being a use of taxpayer dollars and the protection that these special entities are given under their federal status. Of course, PBS president and CEO Paula Kerger, known for being patently retarded, called it a, quote, blatantly unlawful executive order issued in the middle of the night. Do you remember what Paula Kerger said when the Supreme Court in the middle of the night ruled that Trump had to stop sending a couple of immigrants out of the country until a case was resolved? You know what they said? Nothing. But when Trump does something in the middle of the night, oh, unconstitutional, terrible, scary. I won't even waste your time with the NPR quote. It's just whining. It's just whining. And this brings us over to who is eventually going to finish breaking the left over his knee. And this would be the man, the myth, the legend, Marco Rubio, who is, without a doubt, one of the greatest individuals, not just in domestic, but foreign policy. And that's where we're heading next. Got to pick up the radio, folks, from commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So Marco Rubio, who I have said over and over and over again, is without a doubt the best member of the Trump administration. Hands down, the man is a powerhouse. He does not stop. He does not rest. And also, he just so happens to be like the holder of 8 or 9 jobs in the Trump administration. I mean, really, I actually made a bit of a meme video yesterday. I'll play a little of it, in which Marco Rubio has now taken on so many responsibilities after, again, Trump moved Mike Waltz from National Security Advisor to nominate him for the position, the Senate confirmed position, of the U.S. ambassador to the UN. Now Marco Rubio is the acting National Security Advisor, along with the Secretary of State, the National Archivist, the acting director of USAID, and at this point, everything like short of the Pope. That's just Marco Rubio. And in his spare time, he is decking Germany, returning to its fascist roots. And I mean the actual kind of fascism, not, some chubby barista putting up a comic of Donald Trump in a diaper and saying, "This is fascist. Oh my, I won't let me use my pronouns on my passport." No, I mean the actual kind of fascism where, in the 30s, Hitler outlawed all other political parties. So what did Germany do? Well, they're moving to eliminate the second most popular political party in the country. Quote, this is from an article on a news article today, on the recent German decisions from the Social Democratic Party. Quote, today, the government's domestic spy agency has labeled the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, that's the kind of conservative-leaning party, a, quote, confirmed extremist organization, a designation that opens the door to round-the-clock surveillance, undercover infiltration, and a ban, said Michael Schellenberger in an article published in Public. Said a member of the governing Social Democratic Party, quote, it's clear to me that a ban has to come, end quote. Giving a spy agency power to surveil the opposition and ban the party. Now, have members of the AfD been running around burning Teslas and dealerships? No. Have they been running around, stabbing people of different races, like at high school games? No. Have they been perhaps taking over city streets so that ambulances can't pass? No. Have they been burning down cities after a police officer did something they didn't like? No. Have they been shooting at presidents? No. What has the AfD been doing? Just saying they don't like the current system and that maybe the unlimited influx of radical Muslim migrants into the country isn't a good thing? The knowest of no things you can say in the EU SSR. So Marco Rubio, again, who is busy being half of the federal government right now, he decided that he was also going to point out that Germany sucks. And he's correct. He says, quote, Germany just gave its spy agency new powers to surveil the opposition. That's not democracy. It is tyranny in disguise. That's correct. What is truly extremist is not the popular AfD, which took second in the recent election, but rather the establishment's deadly open border immigration policies. Yet again, correct from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who, unlike our last Secretary of State, doesn't lick the boots of the Europeans trying to stamp out anyone who doesn't bring in the Islamic crews whose vehicles mysteriously drive through crowds of Christians and Jews at Christmas. Well, the German Foreign Office decided to respond, which I doubt is perhaps the best move, but here you go. They said, this is democracy. Ah, yes. See, guys, if you just, delete your opponents from existence and, put them under eternal surveillance, that is democracy. That is just democracy. Now, sure, that we might raise our right hands and go step down the street and make sure that we get any of those dirty conservatives. The decision, said the German Foreign Office, is the result of a thorough and independent investigation to protect our Constitution and the rule of law. It is independent courts that will have the final say. We have learned from our history that right-wing extremism needs to be stopped. Nothing about the East German state, though. Nothing about left-wing extremism, when the Stasi would spy on their neighbors. Nothing about the East Dresden guy, a member of the KGB that eventually became, oh, that's right, Vladimir Putin of Russia. None of that. No. Only right-wing extremism. And again, has the AfD actually done any kind of right-wing extremism? No. Nope. Amazing. Incredible. And by the way, I do love the Germans saying we've learned from our history. That's right. In the last 100 years, who has banned political parties? East Germany and Adolf Hitler. So, way to go there, Germany. Did not see that one coming. Yeah, you just keep that Reich up. That brings us over to China, because China, we were told, was going to beat out the United States and that they weren't intimidated by Donald Trump. I mean, there were actual there were actual commie pundits on the social medias telling us that this was the beginning of Chinese hegemony around the world. Well, I'm afraid that's not particularly true. A big fat womp womp for the China simps. Here's Secretary Scott Bessent before the announcement that came later today.
Of weeks, a couple of months. What's your timing, Mr. Secretary?
Well, again, Maria, as I said, the Chinese need to de-escalate these high tariffs, because there is the equivalent of an embargo, and the Chinese business model is built on selling cheap goods to the U.S. They sell us about 5 times more than we sell them. So, their factories are closing down as we speak. We're going into the holiday season. Orders are placed for that now. So if those orders aren't placed, it could be devastating for the Chinese.
And he's absolutely correct. Now, here's the fun part. The Chinese economy entered free fall. As I've said before, there are a lot of economies that don't currently trade with the United States that are very dependent on China, because China makes a lot of cheap crap, and they are wholly dependent on the United States to prop up, for example, the Russian economy. The Russian economy is dependent on the Chinese economy. Russia's not dependent on India. You don't see. Anyway, I digress very, very briefly here. China was essentially in free fall. As of this afternoon, they did something about it. Quote, China quietly exempts U.S. goods from tariffs, covering around $40 billion worth of imports in an effort to soften the blow of the trade war on its own economy. That is a quarter of U.S. imports into China that are now exempt from tariffs. So China is backing down. Remember China? We're not, talking to the Trump administration at all. We're not doing anything. Now they are exempting en masse various categories of U.S. goods because China is in free fall. And Xi Jinping knows that his tyranny, his dictatorship, is already balancing on a thread. Massive Chinese ghost towns. Again, the brutal repression over in the Hong Kong area, and then the Uyghurs in the far west of China. And it is not going to get any easier for them. So yet here we are, yet again, boxing China out, and the Trump administration moving forward turns out to be a pretty decent thing. We'll be back in a second, radio crew. We'll catch you in a moment. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. There is one media story that I do want to point out because it's hilarious. Again, you don't hate the media enough. CBS News who's usually famous for Margaret Brennan embarrassing herself every Sunday, in front of a different Trump administration official. CBS posts an article today, quote, "Are Trump's tariffs just punishing China for being good at what it does?" What is it that China's really good at? Let's see what China's really, really good at. Let's see, the COVID-19 virus, the chow mein, and, slave labor. Oh, yeah. China's really good at slave labor. There are people with Chinese variants of the Kalashnikov standing outside of factories that produce goods for you to make sure that they don't leave. There are nets and bars on the factory windows so that the children that are slaves to the Chinese economy are not jumping from the buildings to commit suicide. Oh, that's what. Oh man, these Trump is Donald Trump being mean to the slaveholders? CBS in freaking 1862. Is Abraham Lincoln, being mean to the Confederates for being good at what it does? Gosh, I can't imagine why these legacy media outlets are in free fall. No way. I too am shocked to my core. CBS, NPR, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the LA Times, Axios. They've done this to themselves. Washington Post. And then they get in front of their little White House correspondents press meeting. Great example. Yet again, the New York Magazine has posted this hit piece on Democrat moderate John Fetterman. Now, when I say Democrat moderate, I'm moderate's doing some heavy lifting, because in some ways, Fetterman is very far to the left in what he votes for. In other ways, John Fetterman is also rather moderate on some U.S. foreign policy stuff and also some U.S. trade stuff. Fetterman is, in fact, a moderate voice in the Democratic Party, which is strange to say, yet true. So John Fetterman has now angered the left so much that now the left is openly just writing hit pieces against him. Listen to this, quote, "Since winning in 2022, John Fetterman has lost his closest advisors, including 3 of his top spokespeople, his legislative director, and his chief of staff. Former and current staffers paint a picture of an erratic senator who has become almost impossible to work for and whose mental health situation is more serious and complicated than previously reported. No one is saying every issue, say his respectful relationship to Trump, stems from his mental health, but it's become harder to tell which ones do." What? Again, the Democrats are going to go after all of the moderates. We talked about this with Adam Wren of Politico. Some of the moderate Democrats held one meeting in Virginia right after the election that was like, maybe we should moderate and, get back to liking the American flag and like going to church. I kid you not. That was the subject of the meeting. It's in Adam Wren's report. And the DNC leadership under David Hogg and Ken Martin swooped in and like excommunicated him. Now you've got New York Magazine doing the same thing to Fetterman. And after their coverage of Biden's mental, they didn't cover anything about Biden's mental decline. Now they're going to go after Fetterman. Best of luck to you. We'll be back in a second with some quick news reactions. We've got quite a few. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
We have a couple of quick news reactions just for you before we head over to a call that I'm really looking forward to with Tim Murtaugh, the head comms honcho of some of the major Trump campaigns. I'm really looking forward to that one. But first, I have to be tortured with a list of the worst takes on the left. So the left is losing their minds today because Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security, also known as one of the most competent speakers, one of the most articulate speakers in the Trump administration. I like to think that I have a pretty decent memory when it comes to statistics. That man is a machine. and he takes no prisoners. So you remember the parental rights movement over the last couple of years, right? So the parental rights movement stated that we really didn't like the public schools in this country telling you that your children are not the property of you, the parents. They're actually the property of the teacher and the state and Randy Weingarten. And we are going to teach them the drag and the climate change and the pronouns. And we're going to give them hormonal injections when you're not around. That was their stance. And wouldn't you know it, now that the Trump administration's back in, and we're going to go back to the exact same civics instruction about the United States that has been around for the entirety of her existence. The left is losing their mind. So this is apparently, Stephen Miller stating that we're gonna get out there and own your children or something.
Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values for schools that want federal taxpayer funding. So as we close the Department of Education and we provide funding to states, we are going to make sure that these funds are not being used to promote communist ideology.
No. Oh, you mean you're going to ask that American public schools actually teach kids about the United States? Oh, no. Oh, what's next? Next, you're going to say that if, you're dehydrated, you got to drink water. Oh, say it ain't so, Jim. It's horrible. Oh, man, I sure wish we were back in the days of, again, putting gender flags all over the classroom and confusing children for eternity. Man, that's certainly less authoritarian. Jasmine Crockett is back at it again, and I know. Jasmine Crockett, favorite congresswoman from Dallas. I love her because she is not only one of Kamala Harris' favorite people, but she's not. There's kind of, again, Chuck Schumer, right? When he made the flub about Trump and the 17%, and he kind of looked down embarrassed. Even the Democrat congressman who no one cares about from Georgia, who said that first people came for the Latinos at Home Depot and he wasn't a Latino at Home Depot. He looks down in shame after he said it because, good Lord. Jasmine Crockett, I love her because she's proud of being stupid. This was posted on her own social media. This is Jasmine Crockett saying that Biden was fine. So she's quadrupling down. She's going, there's a picture of one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the live action movie. And I forget which one it is. Maybe it's Donatello. And his eyes are really wide and his teeth are bared. And he looks like he's vibing out on the ketamine. And he's like, cowabunga it is. That's Jasmine Crockett. One of the best things here you go.
Listen, I'm going to tell you this. People tried to talk about the mental acuity of Joe Biden. And as someone who was able to interact with him, I never questioned his mental acuity. But come on now. Come on, you are crashing the economy. We are talking about record crashing of the stock market. We are talking about, you just mentioned it, the amount of people that he has fired. We are talking about people complaining and saying there is nothing at the ports. Right. We are talking about CEOs coming in and sitting down with you and saying that these shelves are going to be as bare as they were during the pandemic. No, everything is a problem, not to mention Signalgate, and now you've...
Oh, Pete Hegseth. Oh, man, he texted that we're going to bomb Houthis, so the president of the United States being a dead corpse is a non-issue. Oh, yeah, okay. Great. Yes. Oh, man, my arm fell off, but I've got a hangnail on my pinky toe. Oh, no. Old Jasmine Crockett, I tell you what, going all in on the I didn't notice Biden was dead routine. I hope she has a wonderful, long, rich history in the Democratic Party because she is certainly a treasure. So this next one, producer Nick says, croissant woman claims that trans women will give birth. And I'm confused. So we'll see what we're talking about here.
Trans women getting pregnant is not as far off as you'd think. In the past 10 years, 50 babies have been born from a uterus transplant. How this works is a person with a damaged or missing uterus gets a new uterus. Then they get pregnant, then they give birth to a child via C-section. The implanted uterus is then removed so that the person doesn't need to be on anti-rejection meds for the rest of their life. So far, these implants have only been attempted on cis women, but there's nothing that says it couldn't work on a trans woman.
Oh, there it is. I love it. Okay, so a couple of things here. By the way, I now understand why you called him croissant man. This is the dude in a dress who said that gender's like croissants.
Trans women aren't women, then is this big croissant not a croissant?
Okay, so a little science lesson here from the old science teacher. Let's talk a little bit about why men, biological men who think that they can actually be women, putting a uterus in them isn't going to magically create an opportunity for them to give birth. Okay, number one, there's a lot more that goes into having a baby than the uterus. Number two, there's nowhere in the male body to attach the uterus. It's not like you've got like Lego, open Lego ports, or like a USB that can be like, yes, the uterus goes right next to the prostate. No, that's not a thing. Number three, there's no hormones in men for the delivery to a uterus. And by the way, just to be, for fun and games, if in fact the male body had, God forbid, the transplant uterus, the Peter Griffin, man-made horrors beyond my comprehension. Sorry. If in fact there was a man that had the uterus implanted in him and you gave him the hormones, you think his body would naturally start throwing those hormones and the nutrients at the baby in the uterus? No, that is a woman-only function. There is not one trigger, not a hormonal trigger, not a muscle trigger, not a digestive trigger, not a circulatory trigger, not a respiratory trigger, not a structural trigger, not a neurological trigger. None of them. None of them. There are no triggers that will aid in the development of something inside them. In fact, just for kicks and giggles, here is a little fun fact here. The male immune system is far more aggressive towards parasites than the female immune system. Because men are more likely to be out doing the hunting and the stabbing where diseases are more typically prevalent. Whereas it's harder for women to get botulism, but that's just, historical immunology. So for men, they're going to kill the artificial uterus. Seriously, look up the transplant statistics. It is harder for men to receive a transplanted organ than it is for women to receive a transplanted organ. Again, just neat things about science. No. And if you do this, if you do take a healthy female organ and you try to implant a child in a man, you should be hauled off to prison and then hanged publicly for all to see, because that is not only murder, that is cruel and disgusting butchery, all for your sexual fetishes, which again, the entire trans movement is all either the cold desperation of depression and mental illness, or it is sexual fetishization, the one of the two, in every single case. Now, the mental illness can come from patterns of abuse, it can come from a chemical imbalance, it can come from social pressures, but the sexual fetishization and the expansion of hedonistic human taste has also been prevalent since the sexual revolution. Ridiculous indeed. Okay, last clip for this particular quick news reaction before we send the radio crew off to commercial land. Ilhan Omar, who told a friend of the show over at the Daily Caller News Foundation, Miles Morrell, to F off because he had the gall to ask her if she was still going to support Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Now she's just decided that anyone who disagrees with her are idiots and they don't deserve free speech. So I don't know, maybe Ilhan Omar is going to go over and help out the Germans.
These people are just idiots. I really, I'm at the point where it's become really hard to have an intellectual debate with any of these people, because the level of stupidity that they are displaying every single day is frankly embarrassing, not just in Congress, but as Americans. And the fact that these people are allowed to say just the most ridiculous things tells you that the dumbing of the United States has arrived, because
I'm not going to take advice on dumbing down from a woman who married her brother to gain access to the United States. So, radio crew will catch you in just a second for a great conversation with Tim Murtaugh. You're not going to want to miss. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. But I'm not done with the live stream crew. Not yet. I've got a few more just for you. Producer Nick also found us a horrible, horrible video. So those who have tuned into the show for a long time, back all the way to where we were only on WIBC out of Indianapolis, you will know that if I was the governor of Indiana, the very first action I would do would be an executive order to ban bike lanes in the state. Banning all bike lanes. Because bike lanes are awful. We are in Indiana. It is not a summer all the time state. Things are spread out here. These aren't walkable European cities. We don't need bike lanes everywhere. And by the way, we also have trails. If you want to ride a bike, go ride on the trail. In Greenfield, Indiana, which is where I'm from, we have US 40, which is the national road. And there are bike lanes on it. You say, well, what's the problem with having some bike lanes? Well, in downtown, there used to be 2 lanes on either side of the road. And it was one, just had some people getting out of the way. It was just normal traffic. They added these bike lanes in. Now, why does it bother me? Because parallel to US 40 in Greenfield, Indiana, is a large paved bike lane that is not even half a mile from 40. It's like less than 100 yards from US 40 is a paved bike lane that goes through the entire town. So we have 2 sets of parallel. It's ridiculous. So cyclists who think they are better than everyone all the time and they don't have to obey any rules. Here you go. Just going right through town. Yo! Right in front of traffic. Cutting people off. Majorly dangerous situations. Again, just weaving in and out of traffic like they think they're in a Kawasaki crotch rocket or something. Yeah, bicyclists, I'm sorry, banned. In fact, Secot and El Salvador while we're at it, for kicks and giggles. I don't think we have time in this particular commercial break for the radio side to talk about Mark Carney punishing companies who, basically, Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, during the election, he ran this "I'm moderate and I just want to stand against Trump" routine as the liberal. And now he's back. And we're uncovering all of these wonderful clips from his entire career where he's very open that any companies that don't go all in on climate change and screwing over Canadians, Englishmen, because he worked for the Bank of England, they will be punished. Here is Mark Carney.
Climate change is an existential threat. We all recognize that. There's increasing urgency around that. But the converse of that, the flip side of that is if you're taking steps, making investments, coming up with new technologies, changing the way you do business, all in service of reducing and eliminating that threat, you're creating value. And what we have seen increasingly, spurred initially by the Sustainable Development Goals, accelerated with Paris, and then through social movements and others and governments acting, is society is putting tremendous value on achieving net zero.
Nope. They are not. That's a lie. Punishing people for things they don't want's ridiculous. We'll be back in a second with Tim Murtaugh. It's a really, really great conversation. Don't miss it. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Just a curbside prophet with my hand in my
Back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first out of 93 WIBC. You don't really get to meet a lot of guys on the comm side because usually the camera's facing away from them onto the campaign. These are the guys that make sure that you don't accidentally or on purposely say something incredibly dumb or uncouth. God forbid. Well, we've got on one of those legendary characters himself, Tim Murtaugh from the Trump 20 and 24 campaign comm leader. The dude knows what good optics look like, and you guys know how much I love bad optics. So, Tim, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Tony. Thanks a lot. That's quite a lead in there. I don't know. I'll try to live up to what you just described. We'll see.
So just out of left field here, right off the bat, in the introduction, it came to me. So many people who have to run comms for elected officials, they know what it's like to pinch the bridge of their nose when the representative says something that's totally out of line. I don't know if you've seen the clip of Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, saying bleep off to Miles Morrell. What on earth was that?
Well, I mean, I think there's a case, I think, of a member of Congress who knows that she's not going to have good answers for anything and doesn't have anything constructive to say or even anything believable or logical or anything that would satisfy any viewing audience. So the best option for her, as I'm sure she went through this calculation in her mind really quickly, was to just say, F off and go about her business. And so, I mean, I think you see a lot of members of Congress sort of treating their constituents in that way. I think you see in the case of the Democrats, you see they got over that now, but they started out this new Trump administration by holding press conferences, standing in the doorway of federal agencies that most Americans have never even heard of.
Now, hang on. I love brutalist architecture as much as the next guy. Are you telling me Maxine Waters yelling at a security guard outside the Department of Ed, that didn't connect with Americans? Oh, I'll say it ain't
that. So. Yeah, no, I was talking. Yeah, that. I mean, no, that didn't connect with Americans. I was talking about when they were defending every dollar being spent by USAID, right?
Isn't it sad we have multiple examples?
Yeah. So, I mean, they can't. You cannot sneak find me the budget cut of even $1 that the Democrats have said, yeah, you know what, we're okay with that reduction in spending. There isn't one. Yeah. They have never agreed to any of these spending reductions at all. Instead, holding press conferences, standing on the front steps of USAID, which again is a federal agency that most Americans have never even heard of, but was spending American tax dollars on things like transgender comic books in Peru. That was a real thing, not made up, that they were spending money on. Also, a transgender musical in Ireland.
Oh, look, come on.
I'm of Irish descent. I love Irish music. I do. I don't think that our tax dollars should be paying for a transgender Irish musical, however.
I mean, I get to use this joke also as a guy with Irish descent. It's magically suspicious. It's just a little out there.
Anyways, so people like Ilhan Omar and other Democrats like her, Adam Schiff, whoever else, Eric Swalwell, all these jokers, they don't have any good answers. And so their best bet, it's kind of along the line, the new thing that they've been doing is they think it's edgy and will get them attention somehow if they just use random obscenities in tweets or public statements or whatever. That was their new thing. That lasted a little while. I thought it was fading, but
after you say that, after you encourage, those in the crowd in front of you that you have to have sexual relations with Trump because you don't know how the F word works. Whatever that representative's name was, no one's ever heard of before. I think you're just really running, running up a hill. I did want to ask one thing. Are you a guy who's watched a lot of the earlier seasons of The Simpsons?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So when you said that the Democrats don't really, the word budget cuts, they can't actually point to any budget cuts. It reminds me of when Mr. Burns talked to Lisa after she said recycling. He's like, recycling. He doesn't know the word. And no wonder they don't want to be in press conferences. I mean, that's why you've got Jasmine Crockett, my favorite member of Congress, who had the opportunity to try to split some hairs on illegal immigration and instead went off on a long rant about how illegal immigration isn't a crime. It's not even wrong at all. It's totally above board.
Yeah, I mean, that's the line that they got used to when Joe Biden was president, isn't it? Because he oversaw the importation of 20 million illegal aliens during his brief time in the White House.
Yeah, that's the conservative estimate.
Right. I mean, we really don't know.
Exactly.
It's impossible to know how many there actually are, but let's say ballpark at around 20 million. And so they were perfectly happy with that complete disregard for any law that we have in this country. And now all of a sudden they believe that those 20 million people, plus the tens of millions who were already here before Joe Biden, that every single one of them has to have like its own episode of Law and Order.
That's what I was going to say.
figure out how many. I mean, Law and Order's been on TV for a good long time through many iterations, but I don't think they've had 20 million episodes yet.
You know that you're really on the pulse of the comms guy when you're thinking, oh, I'm going to ask producer Nick to put the Law and Order dun right. over when he talks about that and to call it out directly.
Yeah, I know. So for they go through all these crazy arguments, and what they're doing is they still haven't learned any lessons from what they should have learned in November of 2024 when they got trounced by Donald Trump. All of these issues were issues during the campaign. Illegal immigration, for example, is one of the main reasons why Donald Trump won that election.
Well, yeah, it's one of the
Democrats
first times
lost that election, and America told the Democrats, we agree with Trump on illegal immigration. That message was unmistakable, and they continue to fight the same battle that they lost last November, and the media, of course, right there with it. This guy who is everyone knows he's not just a Maryland man. Everyone knows it.
Well, it was Maryland father, and that didn't work out, and Maryland man, and then that didn't work out.
No.
And now videos of him trafficking people. Well,
right.
Yikes.
Loving father, oops. Loving husband, oops. The wife twice filed for a restraining order against the guy because he was physically abusive twice. And so he's not Maryland man, loving husband and father, non-gang member. He's not any of those things, human trafficker. So they pick these agencies to defend budget spending that they can't defend. That's another 80-20 issue when they're on the side of the 20. And they wrap their arms around these characters and try to make them into martyrs and somehow think that the American people will rally to their side. They just pick villains to try to turn into heroes. It's really remarkable.
So speaking of remarkable here, because I do enjoy one-word segues, I want to ask you a question I've always wanted from an insider's perspective from working on the Trump campaigns in comms like you did. Again, directing, leading, advising on key strategy. The moment in 2023 and 2022 when for the first time since the Iraq War, the economy was no longer the top issue for voters. We've never, ever seen in major national polls, consistent time after time after time for a few months there, 3, 4, 5 points ahead of the economy was illegal immigration and the crime that comes from it. As a guy who, I'm sure you have to have like mainstays, some truisms that you always stick to in a comms setting. What was it like to see one of the biggest American political truisms, that the economy is always tantamount, be second on the list? What did that do to the campaign?
Well, I mean, it didn't do anything to the campaign, really, because the president is always focused on illegal immigration as an issue. And I think, if you're looking at public opinion polls and it says that illegal immigration has supplanted the economy as the number one issue, I mean, to me, that's just verification that Trump was right.
Right. Again. He's right over the target kind of stuff.
Yeah, he knew it. He knew it all along, and the country was catching up to him. And also, that I think that's also a byproduct of truly how awful the situation became under Joe Biden's presidency.
Well said.
It just became so unbearably bad that you remember how the arc went. At first, they ignored it. First Biden came in, and in his first 100 days, what he did was systematically throw open the gates. He stopped
90 executive order whiplash.
Yeah. Oh yeah, unbelievable. That was from the moment he said, "So help me God," they began dismantling any protections that we had against illegal immigration
and bragging while they did it.
Yes, and then bragging about it, being proud of what they were doing. So that was the beginning point. And then they had a long period of time where they pretended that everything was going swimmingly, everything was awesome. We're no longer that awful country that we once were just a few months ago, blah, 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 blah. Then the country began to get overrun. And then the media played dumb for the longest time and let the Democrats get away with it. But then it became unbearable, and the media still couldn't acknowledge, they couldn't let it go, and they couldn't let it go anymore. They had to finally start to acknowledge that it was a problem. And then the Biden administration kept to say, actually, we're tougher. We're now tougher. We're better on the border than they ever were. So they had to flip it and contradict themselves from the early days of the campaign. And it was just a nightmare. Heck, you had people showing up at the southern border to this country wearing Joe Biden for president T-shirts.
Right.
Telling reporters, we're here because Joe Biden said if we get in, he will let us stay. And then they're trying to tell people, heck, oh no, Joe Biden's better on the border than Donald Trump ever was. All of it was a created problem created by them that they tried to ignore. And then when it finally became unbearable, they tried to act like they were the ones who were saving the day. It was absurd. And so, yes, the problem became, people getting murdered all over the place. That's why the country became familiar with the name Laken Riley, among others. People being murdered by illegal aliens who had been let in repeatedly, deported and let back in by Joe Biden. And so it became something that the rest of the country, the most of the country looked at and said, this is unacceptable. And it's one of the main reasons, one of probably 2 or 3 reasons why Donald Trump is back in the White House. And here they are fighting over it all over again. They had a total and complete defeat on that issue, and they are acting like they won.
So in order
it's astounding.
Maintain the complete defeat of those over on the left, in order to make the instituted changes that Trump and Vance are bringing in, by the way, not only to the executive orders, the legislation that he's already signed into law, into practice, but also talking to the media on a daily basis instead of getting a middle finger from KJP's lapdog, whatever, Bates, every time you tried to ask a question to the administration. Now are actually seeing some transparency. What I want to see is Congress really move through with a good continuing resolution, with a good budget, and start bringing forward a lot of these codifying pieces of legislation so that we can have these permanent changes. Just from a comms perspective, how do you think that Americans encourage the good congressmen and women who are fighting to make this happen? How do we get the momentum that we're seeing in the Trump administration, the Trump White House, trickling down or gushing down into Congress itself?
Well, I don't think anybody has ever seen a White House this active so early in doing things to actually help rebuild and renovate this country.
Not even close.
The President Trump is absolutely tireless. Absolutely tireless.
Well, he picked a team of mavericks, and I'm sorry, I know this gets off of the question, but I can't help but mention, I went to a USDA press conference, of all things, and thought, standing next to a guy who writing for the Fence Post, that that was just going to be a little bit of a boring press conference, or at least that's what I was told going into it. And it was the most incredible presser I've ever been to. The way that Trump's administration has tackled and toppled the bureaucracy's lordship over Americans. And no one's talking about it. It's the greatest achievement of any administration I've ever seen, bar none.
Yeah. And I think, look, what's coming up, I think you were alluding to budget reconciliation.
I am, yes.
As
yes, thank you. Not continuing resolution, budget reconciliation.
Yeah,
thank you.
One big, beautiful bill, as President Trump likes to call it. And I think there's a lot of stuff in there, but it's the opportunity for Congress to really cement what is the America First policy, the America First agenda, and really what the MAGA movement stands for. The president can do a lot with executive orders, as everyone has seen him doing, but it really, to really make some of this stuff stick and last, it really should be done through legislation, or in this case, budget reconciliation. I think there's a few things that you're going to see. I think you're going to see the Trump tax cuts of 2017 made permanent in budget reconciliation. It's a key piece of the entire Trump economic agenda, is making sure those tax cuts stay, because even back in 2017, after it passed, even the Washington Post did an analysis, and they had to admit, despite what the Democrats always say, tax cuts for billionaires and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Even the Washington Post was forced to report, you know what? It's true. If you pay taxes, you got a tax cut under the Trump tax cuts and
you
Job
can actually
Act.
see the angry, the pen dragging across the paper as the Post was forced to write about it.
Yep. Basically, it means anybody in this country who pays income taxes got a tax cut in the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And so that very important that gets extended and made permanent in budget reconciliation. I think you're going to see Congress do an awful lot, dedicate a lot of resources to border security and things that are involved with illegal aliens and illegal immigrations, both stopping, and the Trump administration has done an unbelievable job of stopping the flow of new illegal aliens coming in.
We've never seen anything like it. It's almost really, to zero. It's when Trump gets up there and says, 3, or he says 9. Trump speaks in that, grandiose, charismatic style, but I actually had to stop and think, I absolutely could believe the number could be 3.
Yeah.
And it really, and just because that's how well the Border Patrol just being allowed to be the Border Patrol. I know, what a crazy concept.
Yeah. So there's the one, people have heard of catch and release. That's people, the aliens have come across. They're actually on our side of the border. They are caught. They are issued a court date and then released pending that court date, and they're expected to return. In Joe Biden, talking about the time period of January 20th to today, in Joe Biden's time frame, 184,000 illegal aliens were caught and released into the interior of the country.
Gracious.
Just from January 20th to about mid-April, right? What is that? Like a 3-month period, really. 184,000.
Under 90 days. The
same time period for President Trump in this term, 9. 9.
Man, it's almost like we didn't
not
need
9,000. 9.
It's almost like we didn't need special new legislation. We just needed a different president. And I know we've kept you, far over time, but I can't help it. When you go to talk about comms, I love it because the optics and what people are told and what's actually going on is fascinating to me. How you can have these people who are so brilliant, and then they get in front of the camera and they start stuttering or saying, F off or whatever it is. And to actually dig into what goes on inside a campaign and the actions that go behind it, to talk to a guy like Tim Murtaugh from the Trump 20 and 24 comms teams, it's just cool. So thanks for taking a moment to stop by with us today.
Sure thing. Can I do want to talk about one more thing if we have time to get it in.
I was just worried that I was taking your time. You go right ahead.
No, but there's one other thing that I've been paying attention to in budget reconciliation, and I point this out because I think, like a lot of people, I have elderly parents, I have other elderly people in my family, and so
I know where you're going with this.
So the president issued an executive order the other day about reducing the cost of prescription drugs, and in there talking about going back to another thing that Joe Biden messed up that Trump is going to have to come along behind him and fix. In there, the president instructed Secretary Kennedy over at HHS to work with Congress to get rid of what has become known as the Biden pill penalty. And what that is a little notice provision by the general public, but people on Capitol Hill knew what was happening, and they warned Biden against doing this, Biden and the Democrats. But it was included in the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act.
Because nothing says reducing inflation like crippling American medical purchase.
Exactly. So that's exactly what the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act. So the Biden pill penalty, what it does is it treats different categories of medicines differently. And it actually discourages and punishes innovation in pill form medicine by favoring other kinds of medicine. It favors what are called large molecule medicines. And think of these are medicines that you have to go to the hospital to get by injection usually. So it would either be an injection, an infusion, or an IV, those types of medicines. He favored those at the expense of what are called small molecule medicines or pills. Pill form medicine. And so everyone warned him at the time, if you do this, all the research and development dollars are going to move away from pills and go to either to large molecule medicines, the IVs and such, or even out of medicine entirely. And that's exactly what happened. Since 2021, 70% of the R&D dollars on pill form medicines have vanished and gone somewhere else. That makes no sense at all because pills, on average, are 71% cheaper than those other forms of medicines. It's what everyone is used to. They're the most convenient. Heck, you can get pills in the mail. And if you are, we know also from studies that if people are able to obtain their medicine conveniently, of course, they are more likely to take it and use it. And you don't end up at the hospital down the road. All of this drives up cost for the entire healthcare system. And the University of Chicago has done a study about this. And the Biden pill penalty has caused 188 different cures or applications of existing drugs for new applications. 188 cures or new applications have not been discovered. And what that means is 116 million life years lost off of the lifespans of Americans who are living today.
We have crippled those currently suffering under diseases.
And we're talking about mental health drugs, Alzheimer's drugs.
You don't have to tell me about
drugs,
that one. The pill shortage, and because we're not innovating the production of pills, we're not innovating how certain pills and how certain chemicals can be derived and replicated. are made
None of that,
because we're
none of that is
favoring
happening.
Biden's universal syringe program for places like San Francisco. It's an insult
It is
to
an
Americans. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and they were warned by this patients groups, doctors groups.
There were Democrat groups who even
pharmaceutical-
warned. There was a John Hopkins team that usually sides with the left that was like, please don't do this. Completely ignored.
Completely ignored, and so they've done this, and again, what's not being discovered are new mental health drugs, new Alzheimer's drugs. Biden said he wanted to be the president who cured cancer, right? Well, he made it less likely that we would cure cancer by making sure that we're not inventing new cancer drugs. And so if Congress can fix this, can get rid of the Biden pill penalty through budget reconciliation, there's other legislation too, but most likely through budget reconciliation. And that would kick off the golden age of innovation in medicine, because the money will come flooding back in. There'll be new pills, new medicines, new cures discovered. Costs will come down again. Another thing the Biden pill penalty did was it drove out generics out of the market. There is no incentive now.
How I know. When our family, the number of people that we have who relied on generic medication, because I don't come from a wealthy family. I have a lot of people who rely on the cost saving of generic medication for chronic illnesses. And they weren't able to get those, especially in 2023. I was unable to access some things that I needed in early 24 because of massive shortages. And yeah, guess what? Those were pills. They weren't generic pills. They weren't intravenous processes at my local hospital that I'd have to pay 3 arms and 2 legs for.
Right. And all of this drives up the entire cost, right? Think about Lipitor, for example, which is a
great
well-known cholesterol drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can get your cholesterol medicine now for basically pennies per dose because of generics.
Yep.
But because of the Biden pill penalty, there is no incentive for a company to come in and try to be the first generic into the market, into a lane for a new drug. That incentive is gone. And so generics are not happening. Pills are cheaper to make. They're cheaper for patients. They are cheaper for the entire healthcare system. If you drive everyone to the expensive IVs and infusions and injection drugs, it drives up costs for everybody. Plus, guess who notices when America steps back from innovation in pill form medicine?
Let's see. I'm going to take a wild guess. China.
Yes.
Oh, what a surprise.
Good guess.
Man,
Ding,
because
ding, ding.
nothing says, boy, I sure can't wait to take generic Lipitor atorvastatin from Z's fentanyl mills. Oh, boy.
Yeah, so China has noticed it, and they have stepped up investment and production of pill form medicine like they have never done before. They're trying to overtake America, and they know that it's the best method to keep their population healthy, their workforce healthy, and they're gonna try to pass the United States. China knows, and they can see what Joe Biden screwed up.
Just out of curiosity here, of the 2 borders, our border with Mexico and our border with Canada here, when China pushes in a lot of really cheaply made, disturbingly low quality medicines, which of the 2 borders do they normally push those through? That'd be the US-Canada border. So many things suddenly make sense. I, for one, am shocked.
Yeah, well, so I mean, there's so many different ways to approach this, but the bottom line.
Sorry,
really
not to
is,
chase rabbits.
No, that's okay. I mean, there's a million different rabbit holes you can go down. The bottom line on this is that the Biden pill penalty has affected consumers. It's limiting choice. It's limiting options. It makes pill form medicine less available. It prevents breakthroughs, and it drives up cost. And if Congress were to get rid of this, which I think they can do, and the president's behind it because he signed an EO instructing Secretary Kennedy to work with Congress on this, if they get rid of it, it will kick off the golden age of innovation in medicine. And it's huge. Anybody with elderly family members should look at this and go, what was Biden even? What were they? And no Republicans voted for this, by the way. None.
Well, good. I mean, and that's the kind of that's the kind of attitude of an opposition party now in power that I want to see the Republicans really unite and get some of these things, like, again, the Biden pill penalty, like all of the other nonsensical investments, with all the air quotes in the world, from things like the Green New Deal that didn't get passed, but some of it found its way into the Inflation Reduction Act and all other kinds of nonsense. There's work to be done, and that's why I'm optimistic, because we've got a party and a team that's more motivated than ever before.
I think so. And hopefully we're done with all the illogic, like the Biden pill penalty and the Green New Deal.
Your lips to God's ears.
They try to drive everybody towards wind and solar, but also mandate that you drive an electric car, and wind and solar cannot charge all the electric vehicles. So
What,
you don't charge.
You don't have a big windmill on the back of your electric vehicle, Tim?
So you have to charge your car using electricity generated by, guess what? Fossil fuels. None of it makes any sense. None of what they tried to do makes any sense.
Well, I mean, that is until you set fire to it for all of the lovely greenhouse gases, so Tim Murtaugh, again, just fantastic to get your perspective on this kind of stuff, because people forget how many things are undercovered that affect them daily because of useless regulation and overtly tyrannical practices by these bureaucratic agencies in favor of these lobbying groups that have no idea what they're talking about. I really appreciate your bringing that up. That was well worth the extension.
Sure thing. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
Well, we'll have you again on pretty soon, if you don't mind, because I'd love to have a little bit of a victory celebration after we scalp the Biden pill penalty, among others.
Great. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, folks. Let's talk just a little bit on the bonus TONUS this evening. There is a bit of news that is developing. There is a judge in Massachusetts, a federal district court judge, because, of course it is, who was appointed by Joe Biden and sworn in on August 1st of 2024. This individual, this Jessica Hedges, released a domestic terrorist who was firebombing vehicles from jail. Now, why was this individual released from jail? Well, I don't want to take any air out of the tires here. Check it out.
Bria and John, the government wanted Owen McIntyre to spend the time before trial behind bars, but the judge in Boston sided with the defense in this case, which cited multiple medical issues facing the 19-year-old, including autism spectrum disorder.
All right, boys, girls, and squirrels, take a wild guess why the extremely left-leaning judge allowed the, again, person who firebombed vehicles for political reasons, why the domestic terrorist by every objective definition. What are some of the mental issues that the judge is going to let the far left-wing terrorist out of prison for? So again, we're starting with the autism thing. Place your bets, boys, girls. Place them now.
Gender dysphoria and...
Oh, of course. See, Your Honor, we have to relieve him because he doesn't like having a penis. So it's a lesson for you guys. If you've ever, go out and commit, a little light terrorism, as every man is wont to do, you throw a couple of, Molotov cocktails at vehicles that may or may not have people inside them to, again, attempt to intimidate the United States government and incite political change through violence and intimidation. Well, then, you just tell them you don't like having a wang and they'll let you right out of the slammer. Fantastic.
ADHD.
ADHD? Man, I didn't realize I had a free ticket out of jail if I ever get thrown in there. Finally, I can say, hey, I haven't had any medication. Let me out. Why would ADHD be something that is necessary to keep you out of jail? ADHD is something that means you can't focus. What are you supposed to be focusing on in jail? Well, man, he's just sitting in there. He's not focusing on staring at the prison bars. He's looking at the number of cement blocks in the cell. So clearly, get him/her/Zim out of the cell. God. In the bonus TONUS, very briefly here, there are two key reasons why you should be encouraged. Why the left's momentum is going to continue plummeting into the cement, including with the federal judges. I know there have been a lot of federal judges who have tried to step in and say that Venezuelan gang members are not technically an organized army, even though they only seem to be coming to the United States and committing crimes here. You guys know all those Tren de Aragua members that ended up in France? Yeah, me neither. And French is, in a rather annoying place, so I'll give them a pass. Amazing. So when all of these judges are out here doing stupid stuff, the left, I've said this before, moves way too far, way too fast. So they did this in Congress, they did this with the presidency, and now they are doing this in the judicial because the Democrats don't have a majority in the House or the Senate. The country is extremely against them. They lost the presidency. They're in the middle of losing the remaining people they have in federal agencies, including the people that were leaking things to the New York Times all the time in the last administration. Now that's not happening. And if there is a Trump administration member that is even suspected of being a leaker, they are immediately shuffled off to different positions. So what does the left have? Like, what do they have? Oh, they have the judges. That's it. That's all that's left. That's all that remains is the judges. And instead of, again, trying to just hold back what the left would consider the worst Trump executive orders, they're doing the Lord's work by just going out and just going full hog, David Hogg, on every single judicial decision. You know, Constitution be damned as far as these federal judges are concerned. And it will end up with, they'll end up pissing off Chief Justice John Roberts enough until the moderate comes down with a hand of iron. Because we've seen this, by the way, we've actually seen this exact thing throughout judicial cases in the past. In summers are when the Supreme Court gets busy. And if the left is going to spend all spring with April showers of really unconstitutional orders by federal district judges, like releasing domestic terrorists because he has a penis, oh my gosh, then Chief Justice John Roberts will finally be mad enough that he will allow Clarence Thomas to rip almost every shred of federal authority away from district court judges, which would be a very, very good thing. A very good thing. And by the way, while we're at it, go ahead and strip away the authority of the executive agencies as well. Go ahead, get rid of it. I mean, if we're going to get in here and we're going to outline things that are unconstitutional, let's start with Wilson's magical imperialist Germany festive fascism that is the executive agency structure. The judge is trying to come in here and prevent this and let domestic terrorists go there. Okay. Well, we're going to end on a positive note for this weekend because Coach Saban. And as a fan of Notre Dame football, it very much hurts me to say this. Coach Saban is, in fact, a stand-up guy. And Trump went down to celebrate Alabama at the graduation. They had him down to speak. And Coach Saban, who, by the way, is a Democrat, dude's not exactly a conservative champion, he stepped up to give a little bit of a speech on a story about President Trump. And again, when you look at the country in 80-20 issues, Coach Saban is a great example of the majority of the country tired, exhausted with the far left. And that is showing up with a lot of the moderates out there in the de-demonization or the undemonization of Donald Trump. Here is Coach Saban.
And before I introduce President Trump, I have to tell you a story. You know, you all know that we win a national championship, we get to go to the White House, and it's a great experience for our players and each and every year. When we won in 2017, President Trump was there in 2018, very gracious host, and he's the first president that invited us to come in the Oval Office. So I take the three captains in the Oval Office, and the president's really nice to everybody, and he's got this very big, good-looking, auspicious box on his desk that has a red button on top. And one of the players said, "Is that what you launch the missiles with?" And he said, "Well, push it and find out." Player said, "No, I don't want to do that." He said, "Oh, go ahead, push it, see what happens, find out." So Rashawn Evans finally got the guts up, went over, pushed the red button. Some lady came in with a Coke on a tray. So I really want to express my appreciation to President Trump for choosing the University of Alabama for his commencement address and making time to speak to our graduates. Now it is my distinct honor to introduce our next speaker. Please join me in welcoming the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
So a couple of quick notes here, and then I'll let everyone go for the weekend, because there are a couple of key, serious things to take away from this. Number one, I love that the very first thing that Trump does, and again, those who have watched the show, those who have heard me speak, I am not an individual who, anytime Trump does anything, I start clapping. That's not me. Clearly in my coverage, have no issue criticizing certain aspects of the Trump administration I don't like. And I say that to point out, there is nothing better than watching the President of the United States walk out in front of a massive cheering crowd, and immediately his attention is to those in the room in the band playing Hail to the Chief. And he comes out clapping. Is he clapping for himself? No. He turns his attention to the band playing a very patriotic song. And he gives his attention to the band. He gives his attention to the flag. There is an aspect of Trump that is for the everyman. As much as he has attempted to be painted as a billionaire, in his spare time, you will not find Donald Trump at Ivy League schools hobnobbing with big tech billionaires. It was a big deal for Elon Musk to be shoved by the left close to Trump. Because in the first administration, that wasn't a thing. Donald Trump spends his time doing normal things with normal people. And that is a bewilderment to those on the coast. It's a bewilderment. And that Donald Trump, whenever he goes to talk with anyone at all, even Peter Moran from ABC, you watch how that interview begins. Trump is just very casual having a conversation. When Bill Maher came to the White House, again, dude on the left, and spoke to President Trump, Bill Maher kind of tried to poke him a little bit, tried to poke the bear, give him the old cattle prod, see what he'll react to. Trump didn't respond to any of it. He is, in fact, despite his many flaws, despite his considerable ego, a normal person to a huge majority of the country. Now, you can get angry at that. You can say that's not true and you're just licking the boots or whatever. Okay, fine. By all means, continue to fail to see why so many people in this country have rejected the Joe Bidens and the Bernie Sanders and the Kamala Harris and the Hillary Clinton and the Bill Clinton, Monica, and the Barack Obamas. They've rejected the individuals who consider themselves above the rest of us. And I do mean the rest of us. Barack Obama never acted like that at any kind of a commencement. Never. You never see that from Hillary Clinton or from Bill or, for that matter, from the vast majority of senators and representatives in Congress. And if you don't think that just casual story of Trump, which every single person that I hear from who has stories of Trump has the core moment when they basically met Trump for the first time. Everyone, whether they're on the right, whether they're on the left, the first story they tell is their first interaction with Trump. And there is a reason that they do that. There is a key reason. That is the story they tell. Because everyone has preconceived notions of what the President of the United States of America must act like, what he must speak like, how he must view people who are not the President of the United States. And when they find out that he's just a normal dude cracking jokes, again, I'm aware he's wealthy. I'm aware he has an ego, 100%. However, the President of the United States has a considerable interest in a lot of people in the country that the left has completely ignored for decades. And those people include the populist kind of labor Democrats from the Rust Belt towns all the way to the right-leaning libertarians and the traditional conservatives. And that will consistently be a facet of his administration. It is not something that can be replicated. You can't replicate it. J.D. Vance can replicate it because J.D. Vance came out of the Midwest. He's been through the trials. But that's because J.D. Vance is one of the people that Trump focused his political career on. Marjorie Taylor Greene can't do it. She can't. I've watched her try to talk to him. Carrie Lake can't do it, and it's embarrassing to watch him try. I've seen people in the administration start to try to do it and then walk it back. Kristi Noem is a great example of this. Kristi Noem originally tried to try out and be a little more charismatic than she really was. She's since reverted to being herself. She's fantastic. Is the Secretary of Homeland Security. Watching her speak at the presser this week was, in fact, a clear picture of she and Secretary Brooke Rollins, who are severely underestimated in this particular administration. The facet of Donald Trump's character that acknowledges in his actions what people in the United States who are not suburban women from New York are and what they're going through is a key thing that will keep the Trump legacy afloat, even amid rough approval ratings from whatever 1,300 people that the Newsweek poll called. Now, there's one more point. And that would be Coach Saban. The reason that there is a great cause for optimism in this country right now is because you have individuals who are discussing the President of the United States and those on the right as though they're people. In the same way that for a long time, people on the right described individuals on the left, even though that wasn't returned. And it is an excellent thing to see a sense of common Americanism return to this country. It is. That is a good thing. Right now, when Germany is trying to get rid of, via spy domestic espionage, the second largest political party in the country. And you have Mark Carney of Canada announcing that he's going to wreck any business that doesn't deeply devote themselves to climate change. And Jasmine Crockett here from Dallas, again, a state that you should be able to be a Democrat from a blue city in Texas and get along with the Republicans in the rest of the state. There should be a common Texan national pride. I love Texan nationalism. It's awesome. It's one of the things that encourages me to be the Hoosier nationalist that I am. But Jasmine Crockett's inability to find any commonality with people who think differently than she is, so she has to drop into racial epithets and extreme, disgusting cruelty, has become the moniker, the model, the mantle of the Democrats. And as long as they continue down that road, and again, with David Hogg winning over James Carville, with Kamala Harris getting up and anointing the best people in the party, which are also the most acrid and disgusting, staking their entire lives over a wife beater, an actual consistent, wife beating is terrible. And I personally think that a government, the actual punishment for wife beating should be flogging in the public square. I just want to make that clear, that the way to solve domestic abuse is then to domestically abuse the male in front of the entire county in the center square. I'm going to make that clear. But in this particular instance, this was not, as the new court reports and the phone call that we now have record to, this wasn't a one-time smack, which is, of course, evil enough. He consistently, on a regular basis, beat the crap out of her before her daughter's birthday party. And when she escaped the house long enough to call out to a neighbor, he dragged her, this bastard, dragged her by her hair back in. And Senator Chris Van Hollen is down in El Salvador trying to get him released from prison. And the left wants to go, his due process. I'm sorry, an illegal immigrant gang member in this country has no rights whatsoever. And he's fortunate that this administration did not take him out behind the courthouse and finish him off like he deserves, as any man who would dare beat a woman deserves. And the left's desperation to cling to that as their champion, this ethereal idea of the socialist utopia that they have, where they manipulate the terms in the Constitution to mean this type of kumbaya bullcrap that was not intended by the Founding Fathers, that was not reiterated in the Federalist Papers, that was not confirmed via the amendments, that was not confirmed through the Civil War or the Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Movement. To see so many people in this country abandoning the far left approach to politics and society and letting the screaming Karens like Maxine Waters slap her flabby arm against the doors of the Department of Education or whatever other government department she's busy screaming at when she's not, embezzling money from the federal government like she used to. To see the country turning away from that, even if they are on the left, is a wonderful thing. I spoke with a Democrat strategist today on NTD, a guy by the name of Mike. Fantastic dude, runs a podcast over on the left. He said that he used to work with a lot of folks over at NPR and PBS. And he agreed that those particular agencies should not be receiving a single dollar of your federal taxpayer money. if you can get the Overton window of this country shifted to where Democrats once again decide, I say once again, that the far progressive movement is cut off. And right now, the real two parties in the country are the more moderate Bushian side of the Republican Party and kind of the moderates that latch themselves onto that crew. And then the traditional conservatives and the populists. And that's where things are hashed out. That's a better outlook for this country. It is sorely needed. And to see, again, Coach Saban, and as much as it pains me to say it, a very well-deserved Roll Tide in that moment. And how Trump carried himself in that situation, how Coach Saban carried himself in that situation is a wonderful return to a normal that we have not seen since Barack Obama accepted the nomination for the DNC. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful evening, whether it's raining or bright and sunshiny. Take real good care. We'll see you Monday. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC.